at the Irish Times a couple of questions. You talk about a limited implementation stroke transition period, but you don't say when it's going to end. Have you accepted the position of the EU that it will end at the beginning of 2020? Sorry, 2021. And secondly, has it been possible at all to incorporate the language of the paragraph 50 in the joint agreement on Northern Ireland, and specifically the commitment made by the British government that there would be absolutely no question of impediment to trade from Northern Ireland across to the UK? Is any of that language going to be incorporated, as in fact the DUP has been demanding? Finally, is there any significance to the use of the colour green in the text?
Are you starting or me on this one? All right. Firstly, it's December 20, and yes, it's 21 months, which is near enough to the 2 years we asked for. The aim in the whole exercise with respect to Ireland and Northern Ireland is to uphold the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement in its entirety, is to ensure, therefore, there is no hard border, and to deliver a border, therefore, which is no impediment to any trade between Northern Ireland and Ireland, or indeed between the United Kingdom and Ireland.
Non, parce que si on avait pris...
If we'd chosen blue rather than green, red maybe for points which are not agreed, and white, blue, white and red, I mean, you'd have started thinking things. I like green as a colour. And as for the rest, when I started talking, what I said is that what's important for us, and what is clearly indicated in the text on the cover page, which is included in the draft that you'll see later on, that whatever, there has to be a backstop in the withdrawal treaty when we sign it in autumn. I think that if between now and then new proposals are made which provide at the same time, in the respect of all the dimensions of the Good Friday Agreement, for the absence of a hard border in Ireland, and that respect the European internal market, which the Republic of Ireland will be part of, if better solutions are presented, we will examine them. And that's the spirit of the joint report. As was the need to have a backstop.
On colours, I'm taking particular responsibility for it. All I say is after we leave the European Union, I think our traffic lights will still be in the same colours.
Okay, and I had Paul. Go ahead. Yep. You have a mic next to you.
And from ITV News. Firstly, Mr. Davis, hasn't the UK government broken all of its promises by legally agreeing that a hard border in Northern Ireland is now a genuine possibility? And what certainty does a transition deal really provide if there's still a huge question mark over the Irish border? And to Mr. Barnier, you will never use the fallback option of a hard border in Northern Ireland because the Irish don't want it, and surely you've passed your point of greatest leverage now. We've got a transition deal, unless you're saying you're willing to bring the whole deal down over Northern Ireland.
Shall I start? The first thing to say, look, the United Kingdom government remains steadfast in its commitment to avoiding a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. That's something which was reflected by Simon Coveney today in a tweet when I think he said earlier this morning it's a priority for both teams, European Union and United Kingdom teams. We've reached agreement on the terms of the implementation period. The legal text is locked down. As Michel says, this is a decisive step. and of course both sides will stand by the commitments in the joint report. I don't know what more one can say to guarantee, as I said earlier, that we're going to maintain the Belfast Agreement, Good Friday Agreement as it were, no hard border and a continued peaceful outcome in Northern Ireland.
Peut-être
I think that one thing that's relevant to both questions, I'd like to tell you something about the spirit in which my team and the European Union are working on this question of the backstop. The solution is included in the joint report, and it was our responsibility to say something about how it would be operational, how it would in fact work. There's no ideological intention behind it. We absolutely respect the institutional order of the United Kingdom, and we think that in doing so and in respecting what the European Union is, it is possible to find a practical solution as of the kind that we've imagined. And I think that our proposal provides very useful elements to contribute to the debate between the different parties. As to the rest, I repeat what I said earlier on. Nothing is agreed before everything is agreed, and that applies to everything in the text, as we did a fortnight ago, including the transition. I repeat, once again, the only legal basis in guaranteeing a transition is Article 50. So we have to have a complete agreement on the orderly withdrawal, because the treaty says so, and transition is part of an orderly withdrawal. It is to facilitate an orderly withdrawal.
Here on the front, at the left.
Juan Saler Melando from El Español newspaper. If I understood you correctly, Mr. Davis, you said that this transition agreement covers also Gibraltar. Is that correct? And can you explain under which conditions and which is the state of play of negotiations between United Kingdom and Spain? Thank you.
Yes, it does cover Gibraltar. That is our view of it. And we are having ongoing and very constructive negotiations with Spain, and they will continue, and I expect they will be productive.
Michel?
Just to flag up on this point, which is important, that Gibraltar leaves the European Union at the same time as the United Kingdom. Legally, we've specified the territorial scope of the agreement, but there's a reference which remains valid, which member states are keen on, all member states of the Union, on behalf of whom I negotiate. Twice, the 27 member states and heads of state and government indicated their position on the question of Gibraltar in total solidarity with the Spanish government. And it's in that spirit that this solidarity plays its role, and that the United Kingdom and the Spanish government bilaterally have undertaken discussions to solve a certain number of pending matters. The result of that discussion, which I hope will be positive, I do understand that bilateral negotiations are moving forward between the Kingdom of Spain and the United Kingdom. The result of those discussions will be fundamental for the application to Gibraltar of the agreement we're talking about.
James Crisp.
Thank you very much. James Crisp, Daily Telegraph. Two quick questions, if I may. Mr. Davis, what is the difference? I'm over here, sir. What is the difference between signing a trade deal during transition and immediately afterwards, which is what was the idea initially? And wouldn't any trade deal that Britain could sign in the 18 months be among the fastest ever agreed by any country? And Mr. Barnier, does this mean that trade talks between the EU and Britain can now begin in earnest? And if not now, when? Thank you.
I start. Firstly, the thing to say is that we intend to get on with the discussions over the whole future partnership, economic and otherwise, as soon as possible from now on, assuming the March Council triggers that, which I hope it will. And, of course, there is no other trade deal like it in the world, because we start from the same position in terms of standards. We start from having a tariff-free arrangement already, and so we start from a position which no other two countries or two economic entities have ever started from in the past. So that's the first thing. Secondly, 18 months wouldn't be the fastest in the world, actually. I suggest you look at some of the things that Chile have done, but that's by the by. But the most important thing is we need to get on with this now. We need to come to agreements on this as fast as we can. That's in the interests of businesses within the European Union and businesses within the United Kingdom. Of course, we can't actually sign it until we're a third country, which is the moment we leave. But I would say this to start off with. This will be the biggest, most comprehensive, most effective trade deal ever.
Je rappelle qu'une des conséquences.
One of the legal consequences, which is quite mechanical, of the decision taken by the United Kingdom to leave the European Union is that on the day they leave, 30th of March 2019, in a year, they're leaving 750 international agreements which we signed as the European Union with third countries or various parties. 750. The work that the United Kingdom has to do when it becomes a third country to establish or re-establish relations with all those partners, that work is a considerable amount of work. There's all the preparatory work, etc. And we think it's reasonable and quite normal that the time of the transition, when the United Kingdom is out of the European Union, should be used to carry out those negotiations with all those third countries and partners. And then at the end of the transition, those agreements, which will have been negotiated by the United Kingdom with all its partners, after the transition, they will be able to make those agreements operational. They will come into force. When are we going to start the discussion with the United Kingdom on the option which the British red lines lead us to examine now, the free trade agreement? First of all, we would need a mandate. Then we need guidelines. The European Council's job is to do that, and they're going to discuss this on Friday. And in all being well, where if they note the progress that we have accomplished and that we're presenting to you today, and they lay down these guidelines, I will be mandated to commence discussions with the United Kingdom on all these subjects relating to the future relationship. Because we have to do trade in good conditions with the UK, but it's not just trade, you know. There are cooperation agreements in various other areas. Security, legal and police cooperation. And Theresa May said things to this effect in a major speech in Munich. There is the strategic partnership on the external security and defence matters. So we'll be starting discussion on all these subjects. And I say discussions because formally negotiations can't start then, because you need to be doing that with third countries, particularly on trade matters. But we'll be scoping agreements. We'll be looking at the future commercial relationship from about April, when the European Council has given a clear mandate to do so.
You want the word to start? Okay.
No,
it's okay. This concludes our press conference. Thank you all for your presence. Thank you.